Welcome, everybody. It's Lucas here. Happy to have you here. I'm going to lead a very quick breathing tutorial, specifically working on some things we don't often talk about, which are bandhas. We'll be talking about Jalandhara Bandha, which is the chin lock. We'll be talking about Mula Bandha, which is the root lock. All of these are a little bit heady, a little bit complex, but hopefully they'll be helpful. Let's get started. I'll move back here. Actually, let me move my mat a little bit closer. And I'm sitting up on top of a block, but you can sit on whatever is comfortable for you. You could sit on the floor, you could sit in a chair, you can sit cross-legged. It's just helpful if you get your spine somewhat straight up and down, but it doesn't need to be military straight, just somewhat straight and then a slight relax. When we're doing yoga breathing, there's a number of different techniques that we utilize, but one of the first ones that we want to think about is ocean breathing, also referred to as Ujjayi, victorious breath, whisper sounding breath. The way to think of this is if you imagine a fireman or firewoman comes to a burning building and they get out their fire hose and the hose is out of control. And immediately they start to close off the end of that fire hose. And that focuses the stream of the water. The same thing happens with our breath. If we breathe freely, we're very out of control. And so we close off the back of our throat. And what it sounds like is like we're fogging a mirror. Or both on the way in, which is more challenging, and on the way out. Let's try it together. Again, imagine you're fogging a mirror. We're practicing with our mouth just to get the feel for it. Now keep the back of your throat just a little bit constricted. And let's try now breathing with that whisper sound, that ocean sound from the back of your throat. Let's inhale together. And let's exhale, whisper sound. Try again, inhale. And we'll exhale. Why do we use this ocean sounding breath? Why do we do it at all? Why do we make this sound? Two main reasons. The first one is think about that fireman, that firewoman. They do it for control of the stream of the water so they can aim it at the burning third floor of the apartment, so they can aim it at the burning tree. Same thing with our breath. We have more control on the way in and the way out. It allows us to breathe more deeply, but most importantly, with control. Second reason isn't talked about much, but it's very important, is the feeling of that breath, that feeling in the back of your throat. It oscillates and vibrates your vagus nerve in the same way that singing, chanting, humming, oming, any of these traditions, all of them have a very similar effect where they oscillate and vibrate your vagus nerve, and it has a relaxing effect on your body. This is why singing feels great. This is why we like to sing campfire songs, chants, church songs. All this stuff feels really good because it vibrates the vagus nerve, which is a very important cranial nerve for rest and digest, your parasympathetic response. So two reasons we do this breath. Number one, we do it for control of the breath. And number two, we do it to massage that vagus nerve and relax our body. First thing we chat about today, ocean breathing. Second thing I'd like to chat about is Jalandhara Bandha, or chin lock, Jalandhara Bandha. This one's a tricky one. And the reason it's tricky is because we tend to lose our posture. Essentially what happens is when we hold our breath, as we're becoming more proficient in breath work, we start to utilize Jalandhara Bandha, or the chin lock. And this is where our chest lifts to our chin and our chin lifts to our chest and we lock and hold. We never use the chin lock when we're breathing. I'll say that again. We never use it when we're breathing. We close our nose, we lock, we lift our chin, and then we breathe. So the chin lock, Jalandhara Bandha, is only used when we're retaining the breath. So for breath retentions, that's the only time we'd use it. I'll flip around and show you from the side. The risk of using Jalandhara Bandha chin lock is we start to very often roll our body forward, and this isn't what we're looking for. Instead, it's helpful to think about lift your chest to your chin and drop your chin to your chest simultaneously. I'll stay in this profile view so you can see me a little bit better. I'll do a 4 count on the way in. I'll hold for 4. I'll lift my chin and release left nostril for 4. So you can see what Jalandhara Bandha chin lock looks like. I'll do it in this weird position just so you can see what we're attempting to do. I'll also use that ocean breathing sound throughout. Here we go. So that's a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. When we're thinking about yoga breathing, the rate at which we breathe and the ratio that we're breathing, these are all very, very important. And so the rate is how fast you're breathing, and the ratio is the inhale to the exhale, and in this case, also the retention. So when I talk about the ratio, I'm doing 1-to-1-to-1. In this case, 4, 4, and 4. 1-to-1-to-1, 4, 4, and 4. In Yoga Body Land, we tend to use very simple numbers. Usually we're working with 4s. Some people work with 3s, but we usually just work with 4s because it's very accessible for almost everyone. There's always exceptions, but we try to keep things simple. We don't like to use big numbers because it becomes a little ridiculous if you're inhaling to the count of 7 and exhaling to the count of 28. Just like feels like a counting exercise. So we keep things pretty simple. So we chatted about ocean breathing, that whisper sound. We chatted about Jalandhara Bandha chin lock. We didn't chat about why we do Jalandhara Bandha. The reasons are pretty similar, but when you lock your chin, it squeezes your neck and again has that same sort of massaging effect on your vagus nerve and helps you to relax. If you've never practiced breath retentions with chin lock before, you'll find right away that it makes it well, I wouldn't say very easy. It makes it much easier to hold your breath without stress and anxiety. I've worked with some free divers and some people who work with the breath for spearfishing and things like this. When I taught them Jalandhara Bandha, they were amazed at how comfortable they could hold their breath if they've never tried it before. But at first, when you first practice it, it might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. And in fact, if you're lacking cervical spine flexion, this range of motion, it might even feel like a stretch. Remember, whenever we're doing breathing, I don't want you to feel anxious, no breath hunger, no overwhelm. So it should feel natural, comfortable the entire time. Ocean breathing, Jalandhara Bandha, and then the last one that we'll chat about today, and I see some questions coming in, I'll do my best to answer those. The last one we'll chat about today is Mula Bandha. And Mula Bandha is probably one of the more confusing concepts talked about in yoga and pranayama. And hopefully today I'll simplify it a little bit, but most of you are familiar with the concept of your breathing diaphragm. If you take your fingers and poke them here underneath your ribs, there's this big jellyfish-like muscle. It's quite a large muscle and very interesting in the way it functions. Your diaphragm, see if you can see my hand there. When your diaphragm contracts, it goes down, and that's the inhale. So the inhale, that's a contraction of your diaphragm. The exhale is just a relaxation. So the inhale work, the exhale relax. Inhale contract, exhale relax, right? That's the jellyfish up here. Think of it like an umbrella, think of it like a dome, think of it like a parachute. I like to think of it like a jellyfish. It's your diaphragm here. Now, flip side, down the bottom, you have your pelvic floor, your pelvic diaphragm, your Mula Bandha, your root lock, the base of your pelvis. In different traditions, they call it different things, but it doesn't really matter. If you're to look at it anatomically, if you're to look at, cross section, looking down at your body, there's a whole big muscular diaphragm down here. Now, your breathing diaphragm is just one muscle. It's quite a big, large, interesting muscle, but your pelvic floor diaphragm, that's made up of a bunch of different complex muscles. The way to feel this is to imagine that you're going to the bathroom. It's a weird exercise, but it's the only way to think about it. Imagine you're going to the bathroom and you're urinating and you pee, stop, pee, stop, pee, stop. You can do it now. You can feel the pelvic floor diaphragm contracting, pelvic floor diaphragm contracting, pelvic floor diaphragm contracting. You pee, stop, pee, stop. I know it sounds like a weird exercise, but this is actually an exercise, the pee, stop, pee. It's actually an exercise that is often prescribed to postpartum women who are rehabilitating their pelvic floor, or older people who are suffering from incontinence or prolapse. This P-stop P can be a really simple way throughout the day to engage and contract your pelvic floor and start to regain some strength and some coordination. Okay, so how did we go from talking about ocean breathing, chin lock, to talking about P-stop P in your pelvic floor? It's all related, because essentially these two diaphragms, they work in unison, but they work opposite. And so what I mean by that is when one of them contracts, the other one tends to relax, and vice versa. And so think of them like two jellyfish talking to each other. It's kind of like this, right? The two jellyfish are talking to each other. And what happens is when we inhale and we fill all the way up, our pelvic floor diaphragm tends to relax. And when we relax our breathing diaphragm, it makes it much easier to squeeze those P muscles, that pelvic floor muscle. Now, they can go like this. It's possible, right? It's possible to both inhale and squeeze your pelvic floor, but it takes a little bit of concentration and it takes some practice. The natural ebb and flow of your diaphragm, breathing diaphragm, your pelvic floor diaphragm, the natural ebb and flow is contract, contract, right? And so they work opposite. What does all of this have to do with anything? Well, in breathing exercises in particular, we tend to work on Jalandhara Bandha, the chin lock. This would be kind of an energetic / muscular seal up here on the top, and then our pelvic floor diaphragm lock at the bottom. I will preface this by saying it is challenging when you first get started, because at the top of the inhale, it's harder to grab your pelvic floor, but you can start to train it. And this is what we're looking for. And the way to think about it is, if you are, let's say it's the middle of the day, like it is here, 3, 4 o'clock, your energy tends to be a little scattered, a little scrambled, right? I've been on Instagram a little bit. I was answering some emails, working on some websites. My energy is a little bit scattered. As we come into like a moving mindfulness practice, which is one way you could talk about breathing, when we start to pull my energy in, it really helps me to come into my body, helps me become focused, helps me become present, helps me to relieve stress and get more from my breathing practice. So what does all of this look like? Let's look at these 3 elements. Jalandhara Bandha, the chin lock, right? Our ocean breathing, which we chatted about. And then last but not least, our pelvic floor diaphragm. Let's use that same breathing practice we started with, and then I'll jump over and take a couple of questions. So let's imagine we're inhaling through our nose to the count of 4. I'll lock and hold for 4. Now, when I hold, I'll also attempt to squeeze my pelvic floor, and then I'll lift my chin and I'll relax both diaphragms. I'll relax and I'll exhale to the count of 4. So I'll inhale, lock, hold, squeeze the energy, pelvic floor, breathing diaphragm, chin to chest, energy's in, everything's focused, mindful moment for 4. And then I'll lift and relax everything for 4. In many ways, this is very similar to working out any muscle. It's an energetic exercise. It's a muscular exercise. Of course, these are much more subtle muscles than if you were to work your biceps or something like that, but it's not that different. These are skeletal muscles. They strengthen and lengthen the exact same way as other muscles do. Let's take a look. Here we go. Ocean breathing, back of my throat. 1, 1, 1. So 4, 4, 4. I'll inhale to the count of 4 with a whisper sound. I'll lock and chin lock for 4, and I'll squeeze everything up, lift my chin, and I'll exhale left nostril only for 4. If you've lost some of the details, that's okay. Let's remember ocean breathing, chin lock, pelvic floor. Ocean breathing, chin lock, pelvic floor. Here we go. I'll do 3 rounds. So I did 3 rounds there. A typical breathing session would be at least 10 rounds. We tend to practice breathing in rounds of 10, and we might do multiple rounds of 10, but the biggest reason that we do rounds of 10 is simply for convenience. When I count rounds on my hand, I will count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let me show you that again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So really quickly, whenever I chat about yoga breathing, it seems like the simplest thing in the world, right? Sitting on the floor breathing. And then we've got whisper sound, we've got chin lock, we've got pelvic floor lock, we've got hand gestures. It gets pretty complicated pretty quickly, which is not really the point. The most important thing with breathing is if you can start to breathe and you can start to get into a routine, you can start to add these things and it becomes very natural and not at all a hindrance to your practice. Okay, we got a couple of questions coming in. I think I can see all of your guys' questions. I'm kind of playing around with a new system here. So if you've got questions, feel free to drop them in. I see Beth says, hope this is recorded. Me too, Beth. I don't know. I think it's recorded. Let's see how it goes. Cecile says, why do you need to close one side of the other to exhale? It's a great question. So if you take your finger and put it underneath your nose right now and you exhale like 3 times, try it again, maybe like this time. Tell me which nostril is dominant. Which nostril has more air coming out? Let's try it one more time. For me right now, it's my right nostril. For you, maybe it's your left nostril. Tell me which it is, right nostril or left nostril? Right nostril is associated with, correlated with your sympathetic nervous system, your fight, flight, go, hunger, answer emails, busy work, off you go. I'm in my right nostril right now because I haven't really eaten anything substantial and it's like 5 in the afternoon. I need to eat some food. And when you get hungry, you go into your right nostril. It's also a time when you do busy work. It's also a time when you do exercise. There's a whole bunch of different nervous system states that correlate with your sympathetic nervous system. Your left nostril correlates with parasympathetic, rest, digest, creative work, writing, love, peace, meditation, digestion. So after you eat, we tend to put a value judgment on one or the other. That's not appropriate. Both of these energies are really equally valuable during the day. We just want to alternate between the two of them. Now to loop back to Cecile's question, why am I exhaling through my left nostril? I'm exhaling through my left nostril because 90% of the breathing practices that we teach focus on down regulation of your stress response. The vast majority of us need help mitigating, moderating, modulating stress. That's what we need help with. There are plenty of practices that crank you up. They're actually really popular right now. If you go on the internet, most of the practices out there, people are, and you know, that's interesting. There's a time and a place for that. But most of you, most of me, we mostly don't need that. That's not what we need. I'm pretty cranked up. You're probably pretty cranked up on a daily basis. So we tend to focus on down regulating practices, which tend to have less left nostril dominance. If you pick up any old pranayama book, whether it's 100 years old, or I don't know if there's 100-year-old books, but let's say it's 50 years old or 30 years old or 10 years old, you'll find almost all the practices focus on slow breathing, left nostril dominant breathing. And that's because practices tend to focus on calming you down. Not because calm is better than, not because calm is better than relax, but calm is better than energized, simply because we tend to be overstimulated, over-caffeinated, over-sugared, overfed in our modern world. And so that's what people need usually more than other things. Hope that's helpful. Let me see other questions here. Is this for the course on Monday? Kind of, friend. I'm getting ready for a course on Monday. I teach, if you guys have questions, I think they're all coming in here. It's kind of interesting. I've never done this before. If I'm doing a breath work course on Monday. We have a breath coach training. It's a 12-day course. I think some of you are actually signed up for it. And how it works is every day I go live like this, and I lead you through a lot more structured program. But we do anatomy, physiology, heart rate variability, nervous system, business, marketing, pricing, packaging, all the things you need to be a breath coach. How does breath coaching work? People teach in person, but more and more people are teaching online. It's a really great practice to teach online. It works. Everything works great online, but breathwork works even better than yoga. Our typical client works with our coaches for 1 month, 30 minutes a week. So like if I had a new client and they were starting today, we would meet every Thursday for a month, and I'd guide them through a series of practices. And by the end of our work together, we'd have like 6 foundational practices that they'd use to balance their nervous system. And we'd go through a number of different things, but what we've gone into today is a little bit yoga nerd heady stuff. With our clients, we tend to focus on big picture global things, nervous system management for improved sleep, balance of energy, improved digestion, stress management, these kinds of things. Rochelle says, where will we get details on when, where we're attending? It's breathcoachtraining.com. If you're registered for the coach, registered for the training, check your email or email training@yogabody.com. If you're not in the Telegram group yet, that's the place where everybody's doing intros today. Will breathwork help me when I give presentations? Great question from Seattle. Here's the way to think about presentation speaking events. You'll often hear people say, like, if you're doing a speaking event or if you're nervous before your event, you should just take like some deep breaths. And that might be appropriate if you're Tony Robbins. That might be appropriate if you're like a larger than life motivational speaker. And when you get up on stage, you know, you need to like be huge. When I do speaking events, when I get up on stage, or like in this case, when I go on a webcam, I actually need to be really grounded and focused. I certainly need to be alert, but I don't need to be cranked up. In fact, being cranked up is not at all helpful. And so what I recommend doing is a 1-to-1 ratio. Inhale for 4, exhale for 4, 10 rounds. We call this a 4-4 balanced breathing water category practice. 4-4 balanced breathing water category practice. If you guys are new to this, by the way, I have this free worksheet at yogabody.com/how to breathe. You can check that out for info. It's also possible to practice alternate nostril, which can work as well. In any case, I appreciate you guys joining me. This is kind of a new experiment. I'm kind of streaming live to a couple of different places right now. So thanks for joining me. And again, to learn more about the course, go to breathcoachtraining.com. And hopefully, I think I'll get a recording of this. Let's see. And I'll post it out later. And I appreciate you guys. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.